My name is Susan Kahlo, and today is Thursday, November 30th, 2017, and I'm in the home of James Bligh in Sandy Springs, and James Bligh was in the U.S. Marine Corps. So, Jim, would you just state your full name and rank? And
my name is James. My middle initial is R for Richard Bligh. I'm 71 years old, and I was retired as a first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps.
Okay, and tell me what made you, where were you at the time, where you grew up, where were you living, and what made you make the decision to join the service?
Well, I was born and raised on Long Island, and when I was a senior in college, I went to college and State University of New York at Albany, and one of my roommates, a gentleman by the name of George Atkinson, and George was in the Marine PLC program.
What is the PLC? Just because
it's a platoon leader class, and you go during your sophomore and junior year of college away for 6 weeks for basic training, and when you graduate college, you get commissioned in the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant. And I just kind of admired, his stories that he would tell, and I had a background. My father was in the service. All my uncles were in the service, not in the Marine Corps, but.
Did you know Did you know your roommate beforehand, or did you meet him when you were in school?
No, I met him when I went to.
And what were you studying?
I was studying business.
Okay.
Business management, and I graduated in 1967. The year before, that December of '66, I went down to the. I really didn't have any job prospects, but I just made a decision to join the Marine Corps. Now, it was a pretty turbulent time right in the U.S. because of the Vietnam War and whatnot, but I just felt I wanted to, if I wasn't going to get drafted, that I wanted to be in a service that I felt was the best and would train you the best for what you would be getting involved in.
What were the, at that time when you made the decision, what were the reactions of your family and friends? Or did you let them know? Did you discuss it beforehand?
They were surprised that I would have done it, but, they accepted it. I think my dad and mom was a little leery of it because of what happened to my dad. He had been in World War II, and he was wounded pretty badly. And most of my friends were surprised too, because a lot of them really were hoping they wouldn't get drafted. Some of them were joining the National Guard or the reserves, so they wouldn't end up overseas. So anyway, I made the decision. I went to the recruiter up in Albany, and they accepted me into the officer program. And I graduated in May of '67 from Albany with my degree. And I was going to go to OCS, and the class didn't start until October of that year. And so when I got home, I took a job with the United Parcel Service, unloading trucks. And it was a pretty good deal because I'd go in at 5 in the afternoon and work till 2 in the morning, get home, sleep, and then I could work out before I went to work. So I was getting myself in shape for Marine boot camp, which you're never really totally in shape when you get to Marine boot camp, because it's very difficult. As a matter of fact, it's more difficult for officers, not so much the mental part, but the physical part, because they want to get you in shape to lead Marines, whereas enlisted Marines, it's more mental. The boot camp for them is more mental than it's physical, but more mental.
So where did you go? Were you at Parris
I went
Island?
to Quantico, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there from October. And during my time in boot camp, I was halfway finished, and I ended up breaking my leg. I had to recycle and do the whole thing over again. So I didn't graduate and get commissioned until April 1st of 1968. And Marine Corps, after you finish your basic training, they send you to like advanced infantry school. Basically, it's called the basic school. It's right there in Quantico, and it's for another 6 months. And I finished that in October, and after taking leave, I was sent to Vietnam. And as a matter of fact, before I finished the basic school, they give you what is known as a MOS, a Military Occupation Specialist job. And the Marine Corps gives you a choice. You can list 3 that you want. For example, you could want artillery or tanks or infantry. And I listed tanks first, artillery second, and infantry third. And 90% of my class all got infantry.
Okay.
And so
That's what I was going to ask you. That pre-time there, was it pretty? I mean, you said it was physically hard, but going in, was it what you expected? I mean, was it hard, or was it?
It was what I expected, but it was harder than what I expected. You know, I knew I was going to get screamed at and yelled at and all this other stuff that you know you hear stories about. But for me, the most difficult part was the physical stuff. Even though I had run a lot prior to going in and worked out and did push-ups, pull-ups, and all that, it was very difficult. And I was able to get through it, even after breaking my leg. So anyway, I finished the basic school, went home on leave in October, and was on my way to Vietnam the end of October. We ended up in Okinawa, in the Marine camp there, in Camp Hansen in Okinawa. And from there we were going to go into Vietnam. And what happened was we thought we'd leave pretty much a couple of days after we were in there. And this was like the beginning of November, but we had to wait because at the time there was a quota of how many Marines could be in country at any one time. Probably similar to what's, you know, you can only have a certain amount of troops in Afghanistan right now.
Can you just say a little something about like equipment and what you had to deal with? Like what could you carry with you? Or
well, what we had some civilian clothes, or like maybe one change of civilian clothes in our seat bag, and we had our uniform. We didn't bring dress uniforms or anything, just like a normal uniform you'd wear during the day, and utilities, which were like the basic wear that you would have in Vietnam, and boots, and enough to fit in a sea bag, which was what most of us were issued. And basically, you know, when we left for Vietnam, it was all commercial flights. We left out of an air base in San Francisco, and we flew directly. I think we stopped in Hawaii, and then from there we ended up in Japan. And so when we got to Camp Hansen, we were stuck there for a couple of weeks before we could go in country. So I ended up in Vietnam. I always remember the day because it was the day before the Marine Corps birthday. I ended up in Vietnam on November 9th, 1968. And from there, I was assigned to my company that my infantry company that I'd be assigned to. It was the Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 26th Marine Regiment.
what was the Kilo?
Kilo is a designation for like the company name.
Okay.
It's, you know, they have a Bravo company, they have
So
Kilo.
was the Okinawa part, when you were in Japan, did you feel, was that terrain-wise and weather, did it prepare you for what you were going into in Vietnam?
No, not really. It was, you know, in officers' cases, we'd live in officer barracks. So.
Did you think about it? I'm just trying to imagine you coming on a
moving
from U.S. to
during our training in the basic school, we simulate activities out in the field, and we live in tents and whatnot. So, but nothing would be comparable to what Vietnam.
Do you remember
was
were
like.
there thoughts were you like questioning or what?
Most of our instructors were veterans of Vietnam, so they would tell us what it's like, weather-wise, and being out in they didn't call it the field, they called it the bush, being in the bush, because it's jungle basically. But there's different types of jungle in Vietnam. Vietnam, if you look at it from like a helicopter, it looks like a beautiful country, but when you get down onto the ground, it's hills, it's valleys, it's jungle, it's hot, it's cold, it's rainy, monsoons, and you would experience that all for even though my time in Vietnam was short. I was there from November until February when I was wounded, but I experienced all of that and then some. But anyway, I arrived in Vietnam on the 9th of November. Next day was the Marine Corps birthday. We kind of celebrated it. Our base of operation was outside of Da Nang, which was in the northern part of Vietnam. They called it the I Corps. And we were assigned to a base called the Rock Crusher. And we were living in tents, They had an officer's tent, and then the troops were in another tent. And we had cots and everything, so it was fairly nice. No air conditioning, no heat or anything like that, But it was
Hot water?
Yeah, but not running hot water. You'd have to heat it up yourself, And there was showers and stuff, but most of it was cold showers. But so we operated at, I was signed there. I got all my weapons issued to me. And as a matter of fact, a funny story. I think I related to you in my little piece with TNT, where basically my first day or night in country, I decided to go out on what they call a killer team outside the wire, and it's made up of basically a squad of about 4 Marines. So I decided to take it out because they teach you in the basic school that officers are supposed to lead, and being this is my first platoon or first leadership position, I said, well, let me do that. Normally, a lieutenant or an officer wouldn't be taking out a killer team or a squad of Marines outside the wire, and so I did, and we left just before dusk, and we ended up walking through a little village that was outside the wire, and I remember that this little Vietnamese kid came up to me, and I don't even know how he had spoken English or anything. He knew right away I was lieutenant, and I said to the squad leader, I said, how does this kid know I'm a lieutenant? And he said, because you're the only one out here without an M16. I had been issued a 45 revolver, but I didn't have I wasn't issued a rifle. And so as soon as I got back after that first experience, I made sure I had a M16 with me. Had that the rest of the time I was in the field.
Was there what kind of contacts was there between the troops then in the village with that child, that he was somebody that was just standing there?
They were kind of friendly people, because being right outside the base, they were always trying to sell you stuff and whatnot.
That's what I was wondering.
So, but anyway, I remember being on that basically a listening post, killer team, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think I slept a wink that night. And it, when you're out in the jungle, it's dark. It's dark. You You
So
can't
why did
see
you
the
sleep
guy.
a
I
week?
couldn't see Susan, right, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, an arm's length away. That's how dark it is.
So was that why you couldn't sleep, or why couldn't you sleep?
No, I was just scared. I was
Yeah,
scared. You know, to be honest with you,
That's good.
you know, you know.
Did it hit you? You think that was like the reality?
Yeah, that was reality. That hit home reality.
Wow.
So then we, you know, after that experience, we 10 days later, on the 20th of November, we went on our first and major operation, which was called Meade River.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being the largest envelopment operation in the history of the Marine Corps. And what I mean by envelopment, we went out into this area called Dodge City,
Mm-hmm.
which was known to be infested with NVA and VC. They had done a lot of tunnels and bunkers, and we went in there with, I think it was 4 or 5 different companies of Marines that landed. We had some South Vietnamese Marines and soldiers, and we all landed in helicopters, and we encircled this whole area, and then each day we'd tighten up the circle, and we'd run into contact just about every day. We were out there on this operation from the 20th of November till around the 15th of December.
With
As a matter of fact,
helicopters?
that was my first time being away from home to celebrate Thanksgiving in the field with a can of turkey loaf. But it was scary. I remember my first firefight. My platoon was leading. We were moving in a V formation. We had a point guys up front, and we were in a V, and my CP was made up of myself, my platoon sergeant, radio man, and one other Marine. Maybe the corpsman was with us too. The corpsman is like our medical doc,
Mm-hmm.
and he treat anybody that got wounded. And we got pinned down by either North Vietnamese or VC, Viet Cong, with a 50 caliber machine gun. He pinned us down for the whole. It was probably from like 10 in the morning till it got dark around 6 at night. We couldn't. He kept us pinned down, and that was a kind of a awakening to me that this was for real, because we had real bullets being shot at us.
Because you said you were moving in a V formation.
Yeah, and my CP was in the middle, and we started taking fire up front,
Mm-hmm.
and he pinned us down the whole day. We couldn't move. He wounded a couple of the Marines. Corpsman got called up to treat them. I remember laying on the ground because I was afraid to even stand up because we didn't know where he was. We called in for some helicopters to try to get rid of him, but they weren't able to do it. And I will admit this, maybe I shouldn't on camera, but I was so scared that I had to relieve myself, and I did it right there.
I don't think anybody would blame you with that.
And but so for the number of days we were out there, we didn't hit contact all the time, but we were always moving, always tightening it up, and some of the other companies took a lot more hits than me. I was my particular company, which was made up of about 30 to 40 Marines, because I had some weapons company assigned to my platoon. I didn't lose any Marines, but I had a couple that were wounded pretty badly.
Mm-hmm. What happens then? Because you mentioned the corpsman. While you're in there in formation, or you're trying to tighten up your ring, and then you have a wounded, how does the corpsman? How do you handle that? How's it treated?
He just got up and ran. And I was very impressed with that. I mean, it was like one of the bravest things
And then
I was afraid to do it myself.
And then they keep them with you, or what happens to the wounded?
Yeah, we get them back, and when we finally got out of being pinned down, a helicopter medevac came in and took them out to the hospital.
When you mentioned about being so scared when you were pinned down, were you aware of your other fellow Marines? I mean, everybody must have been feeling.
Yeah, they're probably all as scared as I was, because they were afraid to get up too. I mean, if you ever see the size of a .50 caliber round, it's pretty big. It's not like a little bullet like this. It's maybe about this big, and it can hurt you pretty bad. So
That's scary.
That was, the last day of our operation. Each day we tighten everything up, and these guys were all down in bunkers, and we'd have to send Marines down to clear them out or throw grenades down. And I remember the last day of the operation, I was told that my platoon was going to lead that final charge, and the night before, I was like saying, oh man, this could be it, this could be, and we ended up moving out in the morning, as soon as light, and they were all gone. The VC had all either vanished or left, or whatever was left of them, because we were getting airstrikes coming in on top of their bunker complexes. We had to move back. As a matter of fact, some companies were up so close, they even took some napalm. They were dropping napalm on them and everything. But it was a successful operation when you consider what we lost versus the North Vietnamese. So, but anyway, that was my initiation under fire. So after that, coming out of there, no scratches on me, and primarily my platoon, I didn't lose anybody. I got cocky. I got, oh man, this, I can do this. I can survive my 13-month tour, and little did I know that the next operation would be a whole different story. And
so there was a lot of ups with emotionally when you went from being so. Must have been, you were scared. I mean, going into it, you said the reality hit, but then when it was done and you realized you and your platoon were okay, that there was like a relief and then kind of a sense of empowerment, or you felt like
nothing's gonna. I can survive this. Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the on that same operation, one of the sergeants from my company, who was part of our battalion, was awarded the Medal of Honor for bravery. He was awarded it posthumously because he was wounded and killed in what he did that day. So I didn't know him personally, but I found out later on that he was given it.
So when
you don't find out later on. You find out 2 years later. I was already out of the service when I found out.
How was communication? Like when when a battle's going on, during the heat of it.
Yeah, you have a radio man. That's what I had. And talking on that, and I was in contact with the company commander. I mean, he's telling me, what's going on? How come you can't move? I said, we're pinned down. So he said, okay, hang there. He tried to get some choppers in to help. It was funny, it was one guy pinned us down for a whole day. But
did they end up getting him?
No, he disappeared as soon as it got dark. And then we were able to get out of there and move out the next day. But that was my initiation into combat. We finished that operation, we got back. You got to understand, we're out in the field from.
It wasn't the monsoon season starting.
No,
or did it not start?
It wasn't. we'd have rainy weather, but no monsoon type deal. At that time of the year, we were out in the field from November 10th to the 15th of December, and basically the only way you can clean yourself is, washing up in a stream or something that you found. There was no baths or showers or anything. You lived in basically the same uniform, your utilities that you had. So we got back, and everybody, we all smelled the same, so it didn't sound too bad. But we got back, and I remember when we got back to the Rock Crusher, they had like a barbecue for us. They were making steaks and chicken, and you could take a shower and get new utilities issued. And
when you were out though, what did you eat? Did you have just rations on you?
They called them sea rats. They were little cans of food, and you could heat them up. A lot of them used these sea tabs to heat up your food, and people would trade off because there were good stuff and bad stuff. You had spaghetti and meatballs. You had turkey loaf. You had.
What was the mood when you do come back? You said they had barbecue and all that.
Yeah, everybody went crazy.
Everybody
was grabbing steaks and just, caveman style, And anyway, a couple of days later, we got assigned to a hill outside of Da Nang. Each company, each platoon and kilo company got a different hill. So we were up on these hills for Christmas, and I remember Christmas Eve, and it was a ceasefire then. They'd always negotiate around the holiday a ceasefire with the Viet Cong and VC. And so I remember on that Christmas Eve, we had these pop-up flares that would be used to signify if you're in a hot zone or, not too hot, so you could get a helicopter in. And they were in different colors, like red and green and white. And we all started popping them just before Christmas Day. And you could see the hills lighting up.
So that was how you celebrated Christmas?
That's how we celebrated Christmas. And the next day they flew in some hot chow for us, but it was pretty cool.
Could you communicate with family during this time?
Just letters. I remember it was funny getting a letter from... I was sitting on the hill, and it was from UPS, and they sent me a bonus check of $100. How do you cash this in Vietnam? $100 check. It was funny. But
hope you kept it?
I don't even remember what I did with it. I probably did, and maybe when I got back off the mountain, I think I was able to cash it back in the base camp. But you don't really need any money when you're in a combat zone.
Was it all combat? I mean, very little time down, like you said.
We were on the hills from. We came down after. I think it was right after New Year's or right around New Year's. We came down from the hills, and then we were assigned aboard ship. We went on board ship. We were part of the 9th Marine Amphibious Brigade that they had set up, and that was pretty cool for officers because when you're on ship, you get a room, like you get each officer got their own room. The troops, were down in an area where they all had a bunk, but they were on top of one another. And the nice thing about the officers, we got to eat in the officers' mess, which was fine china, tablecloths, napkins. The Navy had it really good. So we had hot showers every night. And anyway, we were preparing for an operation that began around the 10th of January.
January 12th at Bold Mariner?
Yeah, Bold Mariner was the operation. Now, this operation was again one of the largest amphibious assaults in Vietnam. It was the largest amphibious assault. We had some Marines go in on these Amtraks, which are amphibious vehicles, and then some of us went in via helicopter. And again, it was like an envelopment type of operation but it was on this, it was a little bit peninsula off the coast of Vietnam, south of Chu Lai, called the Batanga Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in there. We were told that there was a force of VC and VA in there. And again, we were going to do one of these tightening maneuvers. And that's where we ended up walking into a minefield. And it was a couple of days before the end of the operation. And my radio man stepped on a mine. I was right next to him on the phone to my company commander. And we were the first ones to hit a mine. It wounded like 7 of us. My radio man lost both his legs. I lost one leg, got wounded pretty badly in my good leg and on my arms. And then everybody started hitting mines, I think. And the mines were what they called a bouncing Betty. It was actually a U.S.-made mine that the Viet Cong had dug up and replanted. And these were the type of mines that were made to maim. They weren't made to kill. And what it would do, whoever stepped on it, it would explode up and then spray the shrapnel out. So we'd get you all down here. And
were you conscious?
Well, when I was wounded, I remember getting thrown up in the air and come back down. And I know my platoon sergeant came over right away, and he put a tourniquet on my leg that was what was ever left. And I remember I said to him, I don't want to die. And he said, well, he really didn't say anything, I guess.
Who was
this?
He did. Who was this person?
This was my platoon sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the corpsman came over, and I think he gave me a shot of morphine. And fortunately, we were pretty close to a hospital ship that was operating as part of this group that we had been assigned to, because we were on board ship. And we got, within less than 30 minutes after I was wounded, I was on an operating table.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah,
what happened?
Yeah, I was on an operating table, and I remember waking up when I got on the deck of the ship after the helicopter pilot came, the medevac, and I was getting the last rites from a priest, and I said to him again, I don't want to die. And he goes, son, you already lost your leg. We're going to do the best we can. And that was it. And I was out, and I didn't wake up for like 2 days.
So you stayed, this was on the ship, was a hospital ship?
Yeah, I was on the hospital ship for 2 days. And I remember I was first platoon commander of Kilo. And the other 2 platoon commanders were friends of mine. One was, the second platoon commander was John Joyce. And the third platoon commander was Drew Barrett. And John Joyce and I both went to Kilo Company the same day. We both arrived in Vietnam, so we were pretty close. And I remember they came to visit me when I was on the hospital ship, because right after that minefield, they pulled everybody out of the operation. And it was towards the end, the last day or 2 of the operation anyway. So they came to visit me, and we said our goodbyes. I said, hey, we'll get together back in the world when you guys get home. And little did I know, this is, what I mentioned about fate, So I'm back in Philadelphia Naval Hospital, and I had written letters to these guys, and I get the letter returned that I sent to DJ Barrett, and I was wondering what happened. find out a couple of days later that in the beginning of March they went out on another operation and he was killed.
Mm.
And
How long was it before you got that news?
I got it like maybe around the middle of March, and I thought something was suspicious because my letter got returned, and I found out, and then the next month in April, I find out that John was killed. So, I said to myself, well, why wouldn't it have been one of them that stepped on the mine, or his radio man stepped? Why did it have to be me? But maybe if I had survived that and ended up going back in on another operation, I would have not been here right now. So,
how do you sort out those? I mean, is there thoughts that go through your head all the time? I'm sure.
Well, at the time I didn't realize, but now I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't, if it had been one of them instead of me. They say, it was a joke when I was in basic school, but the life expectancy of a Marine Platoon Commander in Vietnam was about 3 months. And it's probably true. That's why every month they were pushing a class of 100 officers out the door.
They told you this while you were in training?
No, they didn't tell us that. It was kind of a dark joke that we all had, Uh-huh. If you're going to be in the infantry, your life expectancy is, 3 months. In my case, it was pretty close to it.
Yeah.
But I survived, and
because of the injury instead of being.
Yeah, if I hadn't been wounded, I would have probably not be here right now. So,
how long were you in Philadelphia in the hospital?
I was in Philadelphia from I think it took, when I first was wounded, I went back into the hospital in Da Nang. I was there for about 2 weeks. They stabilized me.
From the ship to the hospital?
Yeah, from the ship to the hospital. And they sent me to Yokosuka, Japan, the naval hospital there, to stabilize me a little more. I was there for maybe another 2 weeks, and then flew back from there directly to Philadelphia Naval Hospital. At that time, that was where the Marines sent all their amputees that lived on the East Coast. And if you were an amputee in west of the Mississippi, they'd send you to San Diego Naval Hospital. So I was there. I was there with some pretty famous people. One of them was a fellow by the name of John Kerry, not the John Kerry that you're all familiar with. Mm-hmm. The other John Kerry, who was also a senator, but he was a Navy SEAL who had lost his leg in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So we became good friends. Matter of fact, this picture over there, he and I. You see that?
I'll get that.
But
this one here, right here?
Yeah.
I'll let you hold that up. Sure. I'll tell you, I think it's,
Yeah, this is myself and Bob. He was a senator from Nebraska.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, a little history on him. He could have almost been president of the United States. Only problem was he was up against Bill Clinton. But anyway, he's a pretty good guy. Navy SEAL, Medal of Honor winner. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and another famous guy that was there that would be famous to Marines was Lou Puller Jr. And Lou Puller Jr. was the son of the most famous Marine in the history of the Marine Corps, Louis Chesty Puller. Uh-huh. And so...
What had happened to him? You were in the hospital with him?
Lou was wounded by a 500-pound booby trap. We called them booby traps in Vietnam. I know in Iraq and Afghanistan they call them IEDs, but we called them booby traps. Vietnam veterans did. And Lou was wounded by a 500-pound booby trap mine, and he was a platoon commander like myself. I don't know what unit he was with, but Lou lost both his legs above the knee and lost fingers on both his hands. It's amazing how he survived. A lot of people think it was because of his dad. And I remember him coming into Philadelphia Naval Hospital. I arrived, when I arrived in Philadelphia, I was flown into an Air Force base in New Jersey and then bussed down to Philadelphia. Lou arrived via helicopter. That's how badly he was wounded. And it was a crazy time, and we were on a hospital. The hospital ward that we were assigned to was for officers, so it was crazy some of the things we did. I had a roommate in my that was there, a guy by the name of John Zier, he and I had gone to OCS and basic school together. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, he was a twin, and his brother was in the Marine Corps too. And a funny story, he was wounded pretty bad, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it out of the hospital. But while he was there, he and I shared a room, and we had this doctor, and he'd come make his rounds. And one day, his John's brother came to visit him, and so we kind of wanted to pull this joke on the doctor. We pushed John into a wheelchair, and we had him go into the bathroom, and we had his brother lay in the bed with the sheet up. The doctor comes in, and he's treating me and checking me out, and then goes to, all of a sudden John jumps off, and the doctor almost had a heart attack. But
you had a sense of humor then.
That was the kind of black humor that we all shared there. And most of us that were amputees, we didn't have legs then. We were getting ready to have legs made that the Navy would make for us. And I remember they'd send us down for PT each day. And we'd lay on these cots Mm-hmm. And I remember one day I was down there, and I looked to the right of me, and it was Bob Carey, who had lost his leg below the knee. And I said to myself, man, why didn't I lose my leg below the knee? Because if you lose your leg below the knee, you have your knee joint, and there's so much more you can do. And then I remember looking to the right, and there was Lou Puller with both legs gone. And I said to myself, nah, I'll accept what I have.
So that's what I'm saying, the morale, did you have, do you think it was just built in you, or was there help there to keep your morale at that time?
It was the camaraderie with everybody being in the same situation. And we'd go to the officers' club together.
She said you did crazy things. Was that one of the crazy things, was planting his brother in...
Yeah, we'd have crutch races down the hall.
Did family members come?
Yeah, I had
my mom
family, and dad,
and
my friends.
Mm-hmm.
That was what helps you get back into your life. But we had a lot of funny things. They had a special room on the officers' ward. You had to be a captain or an admiral to be able to assign that room. And the cool thing about it had its own TV. To watch TV, we'd have to go down the hall, and they had a lounge area for it. But this room had their own TV, and it was kind of supposedly off limits. But when you're, what are they going to do to you if they catch you? Send you back to Vietnam?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of one of the. So we'd go in there, and I remember one night we had this nurse was kind of an older Navy nurse. Most of the nurses were young, but this one, she was like maybe a captain or something. And she was sort of like a Nurse Ratched, you know. Nobody liked her. Well, none of the patients liked her. And we were in that admiral's room watching TV one night, and she comes in and makes a big deal and chases us all out. And we say, what are you going to do to us? Send us to Vietnam, you know? But that was, you know, one of the...
What was going on outside? You said you watched TV. What was it?
You know, a lot of things were going on. You know, they were landing on the moon then. And, but, you know, the people outside were protesting, not around the hospital or anything where we were, but, you know, the mood in the country was, you know, what are we doing there? What are we doing in Vietnam? I mean...
Had you been a little insulated from that because of the medical?
Yeah, because
I
didn't come home where, you know, I was like on a hospital bus, but, you know, the only thing I remember one time, I got leave to go home. I didn't even have my leg yet, but I wanted to go home. I wanted to see what I could do, travel by myself. And I had my uniform on, and I had crutches. I didn't have my leg yet. And I took the train from Philadelphia up to New York. And the one thing that stays in my mind while I was traveling, that not one person came up and said, hey, thanks, thanks for your service. Whereas nowadays, you know, I remember going down to the airport in Atlanta and to pick up somebody, and I'd see these groups of guys walking through the airport, and everybody would stop and clap. Nobody did anything for us.
No, it's a sad time.
So we were never really welcome.
I hope.
Well, now it's a lot different, you know. We were up on one of our reunions. We were up in Washington, and we went to Arlington. As a matter of fact, my friend DJ Barrett is buried there. And we were at Arlington. We were walking around, looking at everything. And these school kids were there, and they all came. I don't know how they. Well, we all had like Marine Corps shirts or hats on. They'd come up to us and say, "Thank you for your service." And they'd give us letters. And it was pretty cool.
But I mean, I think that's what we're doing now. Sometimes it takes some time, but kids are getting a different story.
Yeah.
We're retelling it.
And as a matter of fact, you know, I'll be wearing a Marine Corps jacket or something, but Publix or around, and people would come up to me and say, "Thanks for your service."
I hope that feels good. I mean, you deserve it. And
it does.
It's,
you know,
a lot of guys aren't getting that.
I always say thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, that's why it's important that we're talking, you know, because some of them don't get that. And I'm glad you're here. And I think it's...
Yeah, like, you know, I consider myself a pretty lucky guy.
Yeah.
You know.
And your buddies?
If I didn't get wounded, I may not be here right now. I may not have had my 4 kids. Okay. 2-year-old granddaughter.
So yeah, what happened? You got out, and I mean, you were in the hospital.
I got out in the hospital back in.
Had you had a girlfriend waiting on you?
No.
No.
No, but my wife grew up right around the corner from me.
Okay.
I'll tell you that story. But I got out. I went back and moved in with my mom and dad, and you know, basically was a hermit for a while because, you know, I immediately got, the Navy issued me a leg, but it was like, it was like a friction type leg where you'd almost collapse on you. So the first thing I did was go to the VA, and they gave me a leg that had a hydraulic unit. I had to have it made. I had to go into Manhattan and get that done. And then I decided, you know, I think I'm going to take advantage of the GI Bill, and I went back to school to Hofstra University to get a master's in education. I only lasted a semester, and I got a call from the HR guy at United Parcel Service, and he said, hey, because when I left UPS, I took a leave of absence. Not that I wanted to, but I was forced to join the union, the Teamsters Union, when I was at UPS for like 3 months, and after a month you had to join the union or you couldn't work. So I joined the union. They took your money out of your paycheck for their dues. That's basically what they wanted. But when I was leaving, they told me, hey, take a leave of absence. I said, I'm not coming back to unload trucks. I might stay in the Marine Corps. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not coming back to unload trucks. So he said, well, go ahead and sign this leave of absence. So I did, and I get a call from the HR guy, look, are you coming back? Because it was like
Is this in New York?
Yeah, this was in New York. So my time to come back was up. So I told him, look, I can't unload trucks anymore. I told him what had happened. And he said, let me get back to you. And very next day he called me back, and he said, look, we have a job, it's a clerical job, working in industrial engineering, and we think you could do it if you're interested. So I said, could I get back to you? And I talked it over with my folks, and they said, I had an uncle that worked, and I had an uncle that worked for UPS, and I called him up, and I said, what do you think, Uncle Will? And he said, I think you should do it because they promote from within, So I did, and I started work in NASBIT in the Industrial Engineering Department back in, I think it was 71. And my first boss was a guy named Tom Aesop. He was a former World War II vet. So it was kind of neat, and it kind of took a liking to me. And one of my direct report was a guy named Guy Trepagna, and he really became a mentor for me. And so I started working in industrial engineer, working on putting time studies together and some other reports, and I did that for a couple of years, and I got promoted into management as a supervisor and went to work in customer service and did that for a couple of years. And along the way, I meet mentors in each one of these departments. And, worked in operations for a while, in charge of a group of part-time guys in one of the centers. And then one day I got a call, the division manager kind of took, again, a mentor. And the center manager there, this guy, George Skank, they called me in the office and they said, hey, there's an opportunity for you to go to work in regional purchasing in Maspet, back in Maspet. I was working in the center out in Long Island. He said, I think it's a perfect job for you, you'd be working on, purchasing stuff for UPS. So I went in, interviewed for the job, and I got it, and did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then got promoted to a manager up in the national corporate office up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and worked for a guy that was like a second father to me, Jim Flynn, and got another promotion into like a division manager level, and worked in corporate purchasing for the rest of my career. And then back in 91, they moved the corporate office down here to Atlanta, and moved my family down here.
So where did you meet your wife?
Well,
you said you knew her from home.
Yeah, one of my neighbors, one of my best friend's mom was a school teacher, and knew my wife Mary, and kind of set us up on a date, and the rest is history.
That's great.
So we got married in 1980. Yeah, 1980.
We'll have to show that.
And we got married in my Marine Corps uniform. I had a.
Let's see if I can pull this up here to the.
I had a
Get up here with the
Marine
camera.
Corps honor guard that were made up of
Oh wow, that's nice.
Marines that I had known back in Long Island. Some of them were colonels, some of them were captains, some of them were lieutenants. One was a warrant officer, so we had the honor guard with the
So things
swords.
went pretty good for you.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good for you.
Yeah, UPS was a great company to work for.
And you would,
They gave you stock in the company, and if you held on to the stock, you could do pretty well, which I did. And I still have many friends that are UPSers. I have a lot of former Marines. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine, by the way. They're all former Marines. As a matter of fact, this gentleman here, you can't see his picture. He was a big influence on my life. His name is George Sullivan. And George worked for a company in New York, Ernst & Ernst. And it so happened my cousin Kenny worked there, and when I was wounded, he told George about me. And George so happened to be wounded also in Vietnam. He lost his leg. He was awarded a Navy Cross. And he had been through the whole Philadelphia Naval Hospital experience about a year and a half prior to me. So he got in touch with me, and he kind of really helped me out.
because he'd been through, he was ahead of you.
Yeah, you know, he experienced all this stuff, and, you know, he was kind of an example for me to follow. And still a good friend of mine. He still lives up in New York. He's an accountant up there.
So what would you say? I mean, I'm hearing mentors played a big role. What would you say to somebody today that's considering going in the service, or to other fellow Marines maybe that might be in now that are going to be listening to you?
It's a tough life. It's not easy. You know, to make it a career. Even though I'm retired, I'm considered a career Marine. I only spent about 3 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years when you consider when I enlisted. I was retired in 1970, and I have the same benefits as someone who's spent 20 years in the service. Marines, I would say, are the hardest service to go into, you know, compared to Army, Navy, Air Force. But it's rewarding, you know, and I have a friend right now that's a captain in the Marines. He's stationed down in, he's a recruiter down in Montgomery, Alabama. He went to school here in Atlanta. He went to St. Pius.
So these are younger that you're saying, are you mentoring yourself now to others?
Yeah, I think I'm a mentor to him. But
Yeah,
he made the decision himself. He graduated with, my daughter went to a different high school. She went to the competitive high school at Pius. She went to Marist, but her good friend, Michelle, went to Pius, and that's Jason's girlfriend. And I'm really proud of getting to meet him, because when he graduated St. Pius, he didn't go to college right away. He joined the Marines, and he ended up spending a tour in Kosovo, one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. So he came up through the ranks. Marines sent him to college, and then to OCS, and so he's been in the Marines 16 years now, and I'm proud of him.
So you have conversation with him. What would be something, and we can come back and talk again, but what would be something I haven't asked or we haven't talked about, but that you would want kind of on the record advice, or at the end of the day, you just find yourself feeling lucky? I mean, I heard you've said that a couple times. Yeah,
I kind of use that saying that I guess Lou Gehrig used when he was retiring, that he's the luckiest guy in the world. I consider myself that.
Your wife.
You know, a lot of people that, you know, might see what happened to me. You're not too lucky, but if they know the whole story, you have to know the whole story. You know, in that piece I did for TNT, I started off by saying Vietnam was the best of times and the worst of times.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of good came out of it.
You're still in touch with your friends?
I'm still in touch with guys I served with. As a matter of fact, I just had a reunion here in Atlanta, and one of the guys that was there was a guy named Greg Luth, who was wounded the same day I was. He was in my platoon. I didn't even know him. And he came up to me at the reunion, and he said, he said, Lieutenant Bligh. I said, hey, drop the Lieutenant Bligh. It's Jim. And he said, I remember you on the hospital ship, because he was wounded, not as badly as me, but pretty bad. He almost lost his hand. And he said he remembered me on the ship, and I was glad because he got to meet my family. Told him a little about what happened to us that day. So,
and that was the first time you had met, was when you came?
The first time, yeah. And he's an amazing story, this guy. Probably something similar to mine. He was 19 years old when he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Ended up in Vietnam, ended up wounded. When he got out of the hospital, he ended up going to college up in the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. He studied engineering, took a job after he got out of there as a surveyor up there. He tells me the first day I showed up for the job, because he was walking with a limp. And the guy said, you going to be able to do this job? He goes, I can do it. Ended up going to Stanford University. He got his master's degree in structural engineering, and has a company out in California he's still running at 70 years old, he and his wife, and has built some magnificent buildings, and unbelievable guy.
So was this the reunion you just had, where you said you went to the aquarium?
Yes.
And you went to Kennesaw?
Yeah, you want a quick story about the, I kind of scouted out the venues down there near Centennial Park, and I was asking them to see if they'd give us special rate to get in. So I went to the College Football Hall of Fame, and I asked, hey, I'm hosting a reunion for a number of Vietnam veterans. I was wondering if you could give us a group rate. And the lady ushered me in the back, and I was talking to this young gentleman, and I said to him, we're having this reunion, and I'd like to get he goes, let me see what I can do. He comes back, he goes, how many are there? I said, about 25 of us, and maybe some of them had their wives. He said, I'll tell you what, you can all come in for nothing. So
it's a little late, but it's good. That's good. That's wonderful. I think.
And they treated us like royalty.
That's wonderful.
And they assigned this one former Navy veteran to us. He spent the whole time with us. It was great.
Did you feel welcomed at Kennesaw Mountain?
Yeah, and then we went up to Kennesaw Mountain, and the amazing thing, the night before, we went to the ball game at the Braves game, and they were honoring these World War II vets. They're all in wheelchairs. When we're leaving Kennesaw Mountain, they were all coming in. So we got to see them. We said, hey, we saw you guys last night at the ball game.
Great minds think alike.
Got to shake their hands, tell them thank you.
That's great.
Made them feel good.
We do see that every day.
Yeah.
Not every day, but yeah. Okay, that's great. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to turn it off right now.
Hey,
thank you.
I want to give you something.
Sure.
To remember.
I knew we didn't even go over your medals.
The medals are for the heroes, and the heroes are the ones that didn't come back.
Yeah.
But there's a special way to do this. You got to stand up.
What is this? Oh, I can walk over. I can be in here. What is this?
Thank you so much.
Oh.
That's a Challenger coin, and the special meaning on that one, it's the symbol of the 26 Marines.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I have a little something that one of our, I didn't know this sergeant wrote about Kilo Company. It'll give you a little history of what it was, what the company was like, and what they did over there. Just a one-page thing.
Okay.
And then that first operation that I told you about, Meade River.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was written up in the August edition of Leatherneck magazine, and I have a couple extra copies. I'm going to give you this one. And
That's great.
And the title of it is "For their gallantry and intrepidity, the Marines of 326 in Operation Meade River." It'll tell you all about the whole operation. So
You want to turn that around? I'm going to zoom into it. There we go. Let's see if we can do that. All right. Thank you very much.
and you can